Box Office Ham says, and he didn't pose this as a question, but I'll ask a question. I believe Mercedes was overconfident with how much they understood these regs, and they thought they could go the hardest route and still win. Had they gone traditional way right from 2022 start, he probably believes they would have done better. Do you honestly believe that it was more of a confidence ego thing off the jump, or do you think it was we're in here, we've always made everything else work, it's challenging, we're going to overcome this challenge, and they realize, whatever it is, this challenge is a puzzle that we can't solve, we need to switch directions? Though, do you think it was more of a confident ego, or do you think it was just they gave themselves so much amount of time, even if it was to a fault, and then they realized we've been great all this time with solving problems, but this problem is a bit harder and may take a lot longer than we think to solve?
Yeah, I feel like this is a really good example of a wider trend in human experience. Some people think that intelligence or smartness is just a single universal construct. If you're good at doing math problems, you're obviously good at doing poetry and everything else. Some people are just, on a different level. Excuse me. Sorry. Some people are just on a different operating plane and they just do everything incredibly, but it really isn't like that. And engineering is kind of the same way. Just because you've developed the tools and skills and correlation, you have the databases to build a really fantastic car in a specific regulation set, that doesn't guarantee that it's going to be exactly the same for the next regulations. I mean, as I mentioned before, the underfloor is totally different. The aerodynamics of these cars are totally different. Even if you have a wonderful buildup of correlation data for how a front wing works that has like outwashing guide vanes and a short, end plate and everything else, these are different vehicles. These are different vehicles with different aerodynamic properties, and they actually make different demands of the tools and methods that you're already using. So there actually isn't any guarantee that you're going to be able to replicate the performance. And in fact, if you go back and think about how complex this was, not only did Mercedes have high confidence in their car, but remember, in the end of 2021, they were in the thick of a dramatic title fight, and they actually stopped developing their 2021 car specifically to put energy towards 2022. And Red Bull didn't do that in the same way. And yet it was actually Red Bull who came out of the gates, dominating with their early version of the car. And to be clear, everything is just theory until a car hits the track. You may think you have the best design. You may think you understand everything about this and have explored the regulations to the degree possible, but you don't find out for sure until you actually drive the car, because you have models and you have expectations of what those models will tell you, but all the models are wrong. It's just that some of them are less wrong. Okay, that's how I would give my variation of George Box's famous quote that all models are wrong and some are useful. My version is all models are wrong, but some of them are less wrong. And yes, ego is definitely a part of that. I mean, we can tell that Mercedes was supremely confident in their zero pod design. How do we know that? Because they brought an entirely fake side pod design to the first test. Right? I mean, there's no way that if you have even a hint of doubt in the engineering work that you would do, that you would waste 3-4 days of testing on a concept that isn't even, or a side pod design, to be clear, that isn't even your real car. And so the fact that they were so secretive about that is an indication that they thought they were going to decimate the world. And to be honest, the porpoising problem actually made things worse. Worse than we already know. Obviously, we know that the porpoising, held back some of their performance, and they had issues with it, right from the beginning. But the truth is, the porpoising issue seemed to be something that you could point to and say, aha, that's the reason why we're losing 6/10. That's the reason why we're losing so much time. As soon as we fix this porpoising problem, we'll be cooking with gas, so to speak. And the reality is, their W13 car, as they designed it, was like peeling back the layers of an onion. They fixed the porpoising problem, and they still had a problem with bottoming. They had issues with their rear suspension, not being able to, increase the ride height enough to be able to have a quality ride. I mean, they almost broke Lewis Hamilton's back because of things that they were trying to do. I mean, if the car didn't have any porpoising, you would have the immediate benefit of just being faster. But you'd also have the secondary benefit of actually realizing, oh, wait, the problems with this car are actually much deeper than just a porpoising issue. And as I said before, I want to give Mercedes credit, and I want to give the engineering team their credit to be able to recognize that a shift in direction was necessary, and not letting ego get in the way further and making a bad problem even worse. As I said, there was every possibility and every risk of making a massive change to their design concept, putting the car on the track and going backwards. And you know what? That would have had to have been something they'd have to live with, regardless of whether or not it hurt at the time, because it would allow them to eventually get in the right direction. The fact that they've done so well with such a big change is evidence that they are the real threat to Red Bull in the current situation. I think, there are many ways in which we can parse the races that we've seen thus far and make informed predictions about what we're going to see. But as far as I'm concerned, Mercedes is a team that has shown the most threat to Red Bull.
Yes.
Red Bull has been joking about Aston Martin, saying, "Oh, it would be nice to see Aston Martin up there occasionally," and it's a green Red Bull, and jokingly saying how it's similar and all this, but you're not making those jokes about Mercedes.
Mercedes, right?
I think what's impressive is, given the years of domination that they had, and given how greedy, frankly, Lewis Hamilton and their team has been with winning. Even though they've been out of the fold for a year and a half, and haven't really been competing at the front, they're still the team everyone fears. Lewis Hamilton is still the driver that they all fear. And so I'm very much waiting to see what they actually come up with in the next set of updates.